The next topic of the day is like, okay, what to do about this? How can we move forward? So I've invited Jojo Stenberg from RFSL Stockholm. I can help you with this one, like if you need it. Yeah, who have been working a lot with trans youth in different ways. And with support. So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you feeling? Great. And thank you for inviting me to do this. This is really an honor, and it's been such a rewarding day being here, listening to all of you. And I'm just hoping that this is going to add to this experience. My name is Jojo. I work at RFSL Stockholm. It's the Stockholm branch of RFSL. So the youth that I meet are usually Stockholm-based, but I'm going to present an internet project, so that is like nationwide. But I'm going to talk about working with and towards trans youth and trans and non-cisgendered youth, because not everyone identifies with the word trans, but they can still be part of the experience of not being included by like cis norms or two-gender norms. If you want to ask me questions, please. If you want to ask me something that I'm talking about right now, you can do it right now. But otherwise, I would like that you might wait a little bit until like later on, because sometimes it's like I get questions that I will answer just in a little while, if that's okay. Okay. Yeah, let's move on. A blank space. Before we start, I would like to ask you a question. If are you a part of or like taking part of any like social media that is trans exclusive, like trans industry on Instagram or proud animals or different? Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying? Sorry? Yes, raise your hand. Okay, some of you do that. Because what I'm going to talk about, like how to increase health in trans youth, I think one of the most successful factors is the community, us, we being here, and our giving back to the people that we work with, and also collective knowledge. So I'm going to start off with a little quote from Proud Animals that was like tweeted by one person and then retweeted a lot. And it says, "Cis people are weird. They call their genitals private parts, but they insist on knowing what mine are. Not so private anymore. Ha." And this to me is like community power. I'm going to be using a lot of those funny entrances, you'll see. I just wanted to send this with you as a starting point. Like we here, us, we are the ones who are doing it. Okay, so the two projects that I'm going to be talking about are HBTQ-kojan.se. It's a mentorship online. And the other one is Transit, and that has been like support groups, conversation groups, and a book, an anthology. And I have that one with me here, so you can pass it around. It's in Swedish, but there are quite a few really nice illustrations that you can look at. Okay. HBTQ-kojan. Kojan, that is like the Swedish word for treehouse. So it's like a safe space or a little space that you can like hide into, where you can feel safe. You can bring the things that you like, and you can invite a friend and sit there and talk about things that matter to you. And that is like the feeling that we want to convey to this space, as a means to create a feeling of accessibility. The other picture, Transit, is a person who has a t-shirt on and it says Transkamp, that is like trans power or trans fight, something like that. It's also, we wanted to convey a feeling of empowerment, creating that. Okay, before I go into these, the projects and the methods and perspectives behind them, I would like you to turn to the person next to you and just talk 1 minute about this topic. What are young trans people subjected to by society that creates a need for support and action? If you can just turn to the person next to you and, like, what do they meet? Why do they need this? 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, I think 1 minute is up. So now you have all the answers to this question. I'm counting on it. Okay, thank you very much. Will someone, like 1 or 2 people, say something that you talked about, mention some things? Oh yeah.
We talked about the young trans persons being subjected to suicide and lack of self-education. And
yes. Suicide and lack of self-education, like education about your rights and healthcare and stuff like that, and identity perhaps. Yes.
And I said something about, like, as a young person in general, it's very much up to others, and like your support, like that the institutions around you work for your health to be good. Like school, you have to be there. In Sweden, at least, we have duty to be in school. It's like illegal not to go. And most people live with parents or adults that provide for you economically. So you're very dependent on that the family works. And yeah, in so many ways, you need others for, yeah.
Yeah, you're dependent on adults usually to set like boundaries and stuff for you and give you things. Yes, thank you. I think back there.
I was saying this is regarding trans people in general, but I think it's even more important when you're young and you're like in the process of forming your personality. As a trans person, you are in mixed companies with cis people. You're mostly regarded as the trans person. You're not allowed to like branch out on your personality and be a multi-dimensional human being, but that you're like a representative of a single group.
Very much so. Yes.
I think also a sort of a lack of visibility, validation and respect in that sense of assumptions being made about your identity based on how you look and a general invisibility, or having to constantly be saying, no, I'm this and I want you to engage with me this way. So a lack of validation and respect, I think, following on from the lack of just visibility generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. We have identified a few things, you've mentioned them. Lack of competence and treatment, invisibility, as was said, internalized LGBTQ phobia. Now I'm talking in general about LGBTQ youth. Does anyone know what that means, internalized LGBTQ phobia? Does someone want to explain it? I'll do it. No? Go ahead. With the microphone.
It's the phobia that the LGBTQI community feels against the other LGBTI community people.
Okay.
The eternal one.
Like within the community, like different sub-communities turning on each other, more or less?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a definition I haven't heard, and it was not the definition I was thinking about, but thank you. The one I was thinking about was when LGBTQ people when they internalize the attitudes towards LGBTQ people in general onto themselves. Like if society says it's not okay to be trans, then you feel it yourself. It's not okay to be trans, so I'm just going to hide that part of myself as much as I can. But I think that's super valid as well. Thanks. Being questioned and scaled, like why can't scaled is like being diminished, I think, be belittled, made less. And also normalization, like thinking if society thinks that it's okay to treat if society thinks that I should be less, then that's probably normal. Then I should be less. The consequences of having to come out and having that coming out story be very predetermined. It's supposed to contain certain things and then be accepted. So it's not really a story that you have, that is your own. Being yourself, like it's really in order to come out, you have to be super sure of who you are, because you're gonna meet a lot of resistance when you do. So there is really no room of trying to find yourself or being yourself, because when you start to having these issues, you need to be very sure. And also, of course, violence and threat of violence, suicide, as was mentioned. So these are a few things that young trans people are subjected to, that of course makes them very much in need of support and certain spaces where they can feel safe. I'm gonna talk a little bit about our methods and perspectives that we have been using in creating these spaces. These are not all of them, but it is like the most important, I might say. Safer space, safe space. If you look at this picture, can you mention some things about this picture that makes it a safe space? What about this picture is safe? Yes.
The door is closed.
Yes. Creating a safe space, if the space within is safe, of course. It might be your home with your parents when they're evil and they're not nice. One more thing.
Sign.
The sign. Yeah. It says safe space. Like with HBTQ-kojan, you know? It says LGBTQ, but only in Swedish, HBTQ. It says that it's a place for LGBTQ people to come. It's easier to understand that this is a space for me if it's very clear. A youth perspective. We try to. The picture is a picture of abused emojis that has been used by an organization called BRIS, which is an organization that works for support for youth in Sweden by chat and telephone and email. So this is a way for young people to easily communicate that they are being abused, some sort. But we try to always keep the youth perspective in first hand, like meeting the youth where they are. We cannot say it's going to get better, because that's not where they are right now. They might not care if it's going to get better or not, because they do not want to live another day. So we have to meet them like right where they are right now. And also to try to, how do I say this? Work against hierarchy within the ages. Like all the mentors in the mentorship, they are over 24, and that comes with a certain experience and certain responsibility towards youth. Okay. Critical awareness pedagogue. I don't know if this is a term. I was trying to ask my colleagues, like, what is the term to use? Swedish term is normkritisk pedagogik. And this is, well, one way to express it. Critical awareness pedagogy, queer pedagogy, I don't know.
Norm critical.
Norm critical. Yeah, that was easier and made more sense. Thank you. I'm going to read the picture. If your child is old enough to know that they are cisgendered, then they are also old enough to know that they are transgendered. To always like keep the eye on the norm, and to always give that knowledge accessible for youth. As I was saying, a lot of people are normalizing their situations, are filled with internalized LGBTQ phobia. When we inform them of the hierarchies of society, the heteronormativity, cisnormativity, something happens, like the self-hatred might loosen up a little bit, because you feel that, oh my God, this is a structure. It's a structure in society that is doing this. It is not normal that I should feel this way. So that's a very important part of our work. Another important part is representation. This is the picture is a picture of Laverne Cox. You might have heard of her. She is an actress in a TV series, Orange is the New Black, but she's also become a very well-viewed trans spokesperson, one might say. And the quote says, "It is revolutionary for any trans person to choose to be seen and visible in a world that tells us we should not exist." So, I mean, what she has done is like pretty amazing, actually. One might say it could be a before and after Laverne Cox in a way, because she is like really voicing our issues in an enormous way. And also the fact that she is not a white person is very made visible. And the last part, empowerment. We always try to keep focus on what works in your life, and to empower that. If nothing works, then we focus on what works most of what doesn't work. It's really important to find the resources within yourself, because sometimes you are completely alone, and then it is our job to make sure that you find someone to talk to. If it's a person at school, a friend, us, someone else, that is our job, to make sure that that you get to find the resources within yourself to change what you want to change. And I mentioned BRIS before. It's a really big organization in Sweden that works with youth, and they have pinpointed a few, like 2 things that are most important for health, for good health. And one of them is like, if you have one good connection with one other person, preferably an adult, that makes not all the difference, but it makes a lot of difference. If you just have one person who sees you and believes you and says, this is not okay, it makes a lot of difference. And it could be a one-time event or like a long relationship, but it's a getting better factor. The next picture is, this is a picture of the mentors at HBTQ-kojan. We work with peer-to-peer, and I'm showing you this picture because who can be peer here? It is very important to be suspicious and reflect on what you're doing and screen yourself for what you're missing. This is a picture of exclusively white people. So we are working a lot in our organization and in our jobs to get better at representation and the peer perspective. These are not all the mentors at HBTQ-kojan, but it's, if you look at the whole group, it's basically white. So it's one of the things that we really have to work on in our organizations.
May I just ask, are people just from Sweden originally, or are there also people from other different countries as well as the peer-to-peer mentors?
The mentorship is in Swedish, but where the mentors are from, it differs, but mostly Swedish. And we applied for funds to be able to chat in other languages and like recruit mentors, but it was declined. So we have to find other money to do that. Any other questions so far? Okay. How much time do I have? I just, so I don't. Yeah, and we started at
10 minutes more?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions before I start talking a little bit more about the projects? No? Okay. The mentorship. It's an online-based mentorship where we offer anonymous support and the possibility of identification through conversation online, peer-to-peer. The mentors go through training, basic training, where they get their tools to be able to, based on the methods and perspectives, be able to meet the youth that they meet in a good and professional way. But it's also based on them being their own persons, since they are like a trans youth should be able to chat with a person, with a grown mentor who also identifies as trans somehow. So that's the criteria for the mentorship. We hope that we are strengthening young LGBTQ people and breaking the isolation. So, like chatting online, we have noticed that it's a really good way to get people to take the first step into our organization and to meet other people. Because then we can tell them like, oh, do you know about this summer camp, this trans camp in Malmö, for instance, or this after-school program in Linköping, so that in that way we can break the isolation and perhaps help them find that one person who hopefully leads to a few more people. We hope that we are reaching those in need of support right now. And since we started in September 2012. Since then, we have had a constant line, like people waiting in line to get a mentor. So we are not meeting the needs of the people, but we could if we had more money. When we don't, what we do is we are professionals in LGBTQ questions or lives, whatever. When we meet people who have struggle with like depression or other things that we are not trained to meet, then we refer to other places where they can get a better, what do you call it? Yes, thanks, better support. So that's a really important thing in doing this, that we have to know our limitations, to not take on responsibility that we cannot deliver. That is really very, very crucial and important. Okay, a little data. This is, I'm sorry about the picture, it's not super great. we did a report from between 2012 and 2014, all the conversations that we had. And the trans identities that we surveyed turned out like this. Intergender, it's a term that we might not use today, but we used it then. 39%. Transsexual, 6%. Trans girl, 22%. Trans boy, 33%. And I mean, the transsexual there are people who identify as transsexuals, but they don't. Yeah, we wanted to keep it open if they like didn't want to put in boy or girl, so to speak. The contact is 10 weeks. They chat one hour every week for 10 weeks. And when at the first chat, they get to fill in a form, and also at the last one. And based on those surveys, we can see what effects these conversations have. And this states openness, and you can see that this column is the first one, and the blue column there is cannot be open. And you can see how that changes to the last one. It's not completely gone, but it changes a little bit. And the pink one, the one in the middle, it says can partly be open. And what we can see is that probably some of the blue turns into yellow in the other formula. Pink, thank you. What did I say? Yellow. Thanks. And the last one can be like completely open, and it's not a lot of difference there. But I mean, it's 10 weeks. It's not a super long period of time, but it makes some change. And if we look at this last one, if they have experienced positive change, and then we can just we can look at the last one. Positive change, and then we can see that it's the last one, the 62%, the last one, it's if the time in LGBTQ-kojan has it given me a positive change, and for 62% it has. So it makes some difference, I think. Okay, do you have any questions before I go into the last project? No? Transit. It was a project that we ran between 2009 to 2012. And it was run simultaneously as Transformering started in RFSL Ungdom. And we think that these both two projects really made a change for our organizations. Because they were exclusively directed to trans youth. So that had not been made or done before in our organization, as far as I know. What we made in Transit was we started support groups for trans youth who were within the trans health care, and becoming like getting the diagnosis transsexualism. They got to join these support groups that was held by two counselors. And we also have conversation groups that is peer-to-peer based, and that is not directed exclusively to youth within the trans healthcare, but it's like trans in the bigger criteria or whatever. And you don't have to be like, oh, I know I'm a trans person. It could be like, I have questions. I'm wondering, maybe. So it's not like you only have to say, I want to be in this group. I think I need to get in. And it's free, and it runs for 8 weeks, one evening for 8 weeks. And we also made the book where we wanted to collect a number of like stories, trans stories from real life that could serve as a voice for young trans people. As was mentioned before, a lot of young trans people are becoming like ambassadors for their identity, having to inform the entire surroundings. What is trans? How does it work? Blah, 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 blah. So we wanted to like have this book so they can like give this book to the person who asks, read this book. So I don't have to be the one who answers your question. So it was a means to give a voice to young trans people. And some of you are in it, I think. At least one person. Working with representation in this book, we used a lot of these portraits that are made by a person called Charlie Kåberg. And I think they are really nice. By this, the groups they have become a program that we continue to have at RFSL Stockholm, and it's also been growing throughout the country. So it's like in Gothenburg, in Malmö, in other cities. These groups are being held, and that continuity we think is a very important factor, and also the possibility of actually having a conversation with someone. Like information, since Transformering exists, the webpage transformering.se. Still, people want to have a conversation. They want to talk. They might get the answer online, but they still want to ask someone about it and get this personal contact. It's really important. And also the social context, being able to meet others in the same age, possibly, and talk about things that they can have in common. And the voice, I mentioned that. A quote from one of the group members. "The first time I met someone with similar experience as me, everything changed." And here is the last quote from the groups. "You have changed my life." That is basically what these groups do. Not for everyone, of course, but for a lot of people it does. And also, "You have saved my life." So these things really, really matter a lot, the work that we're doing. And also we need to like get better at it, being able to meet more people. Okay, that was me. If you have any questions or, yeah.
Since you are working with underage, do you have any problem with the parents or anything like this, or with the law? Because we, as an organization in Cyprus, we have some underage that they want to get help from us, but we are trying to give them in other services in order not to have problems with the laws.
That's a good question. We have the support, the groups, the conversation groups. The age there is like 15 to 25. In none of our programs, you need parental consent to join. The mentorship is online, so anyone can just get an account and get a mentor. It's completely anonymous, and you don't need any screening process to get in. And the basic reason why we're doing this is because a lot of the times the parents are the problem. That is really what we are seeing. So we need to create spaces where free from parents or other caregivers or adults. When we meet youth that we get information that they are being subjected to like violence or stuff like that in their home environment or other, then we as an NGO, we don't have that, what do you call it? We're not obliged by law to contact the authorities.
A mandatory reporter.
No, yeah. Exactly. But we have it as a routine to always do so with the consent of the youth. So we don't do anything without their consent.
Okay, this is our problem, I think, but that you might be accused of brainwashing the children, this gay propaganda.
Yeah.
This is something that could happen to our country, and that's why I'm exploring ways how to avoid that.
That is a conversation that we are always having when we start something new, and it is why the mentors, they are to become a mentor or to work with young people in our organization. You have to submit a
clearance.
Yes, thank you. A police clearance stating that you have not been
charged with any sort of
exactly.
Yeah.
But when we started, we have this after-school program called Egalia that was started in 2007, and at the day of the big fest, when it started, some organization threw a rock through our window, and the message was that this was a place for gay propaganda, or like a place where old gay people can meet young people and stuff like that. So it's something that we are always thinking about, because we can be accused of that. Thanks. Yeah, we have to keep the time. It's okay. The two last questions.
Hey. No, I just wanted to also, like, in what Petros asked, is like, because there are some, in certain countries there are some legal restrictions to working with minors or whatever. So I'm wondering, like, how you got passed through that, if there have been or are any legal restrictions to like what?
Well, there aren't any, like, you don't need like parents' consent in a legal way to participate in online things or in like after-school programs and stuff like that. If you go to a camp, then you need to, like if you leave your home. But when you come home in the evening, or the parents or caregivers, they don't notice what you've been doing, then I'm not super informed, but we have this is not the same issue in Sweden as it is in other countries. I think. But I mean, if a parent comes to, when we have this after school program, we're like, no adults allowed in this area. This is a free area. But I mean, they can, if they call the police, then we can't do anything about it. Then the police just comes in. But we have the strict policy that this is the safe space is like adult free, apart from the leaders. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. And Leo.